Hi everyone, welcome back in another amazing project. We're going to be building this task manager application. So before I start showing you the application, I want to just let you know that I was heavily inspired by this little small application provided by shadcn to be able to show the components, but also to be able to show the Tanstack React table. So this is what they're using to be able to actually use this table with all the features that we're going to be using, like sorting, filtering, and other things uh, that we're going to be using for the application, and we're going to learn through building this application. So as you can see here, we're having a simple nav bar at the top. We're having the light and the dark mode, so it's pretty straightforward. We're using shadcn for this. We're having the dialog to be able to add or edit a text. I'm going to show you how this is working. We're having these cards to be able to show some numbers. So here in the text or the table area, we're having the filter. So if I want to look for something, as you can see, I'm going to get what I'm searching for. But if I don't find anything, so we are going to get this message. All of this we're using Tanstack React table. Also, we can be able to actually um, show the status of the task with their numbers. So it is pretty much the same like they're having in here. So we're gonna build this from scratch. So when I click on the to do, so I'm gonna just get the tasks that are having the to do status. Also notice right now we can be able to show the actual filter tag that we clicked on. So the same thing that it is happening in here. So when I click on the other one, we're gonna show it uh, next to it. So the same thing is going to happen if I click on the backlog. And also we can be able to really filter down stuff when I click on medium. So eventually, because we are already filtering by status, there is no task that match the filtering elements that we selected. But when I click on low, so we're going to get the two tasks because it matches the filtering that we set. And when I click on the reset, so everything is going to be reset. And also we can be able to actually hide the columns as you can see. And also we can be able to do it just from here. So if I had the status column and here, as you can see, it's going to be unchecked automatically. So, and all of this is going to be handled by Tanstack React table. And also we can be able to sort decently and ascendantly and descendantly, and also we can be able to do this for the other columns. But as you can see, the title doesn't have the hide features because if we hide it, we can't be able to filter the elements because we're using this column for the filtering, and if this is hidden, we can't be able to do the filtering. So that's why we enable the hiding for the title column. And finally, we're having at the bottom the pagination, as you can see. So everything is working as expected. So now I'm going to show you this little drop down. So this drop down, I was inspired by the same drop down, but I added some icons just to make the drop down pop a bit and all of the features in here. So now nothing is working, but here everything is working. So I'm going to start by making a copy, for example. When I click on make copy, so as you can see, the actual task has been copied successfully. And if I want to delete this task, all I have to do is click on the delete. And as you can see, the task has been deleted successfully with the notification. Now, if I want to set it as favorite or unfavorite. So the thing that I added though is the favorite. So I can be able to set, for example, this task as favorite. So when I click on favorite, so it's going to be set as favorite. And this it's going to be changing depending on whether it is favorite or not. So if it is favorite, we're going to show the in favorite text. Otherwise, we're going to show the favorite. And here we can be able to actually define or update the bug, the label, sorry, just from here. So the same thing if we do for this application. So I'm going to set it as documentation. So everything is working fine. And finally, we're having the edit. And so before that, I'm going to just show you how we can be able to add a new task. So when I click on add, so I'm going to add something in here just to show how things are working. And I'm going to just update the elements in here and click on add. So as you can see, the task has been added successfully and I can be able to update it, of course. So when I click on update, so we're going to use the same dialog, but I'm going to actually load all the information of the task that we clicked on. So I'm going to add some stuff in here. I'm going to change some of the elements just to see that everything is working. So as you can see, everything like the task has been edited successfully. So so this is what we're going to be building for this application. So if you are interested about building this application, stick with me till the end of this video. Hi everyone, welcome back. So as you can see, I'm in Visual Studio Code and I already created the Next.js project. So I'm going to walk you through step by step very quickly just to show you how to be able to do this, since a lot of people know how to create this. And if you are new to this whole world, so don't worry, I'm going to show you step by step how to do so. So the first thing that I'm going to start from is the Next.js website. And go to the docs section. So in here, they are showing us the steps needed to be able to install Next.js. So the first thing that you should have in your system is Node.js. So if we go to their website or the page, just to show you what it looks like. So make sure to download this and install it into your system, since Next.js use for the backend side uses Node.js. So after installing Node.js, the next thing, uh, so that's the terminal or the uh, command line to install Next.js. So copy this and open up your terminal, and so I'm going to go to another window. So and just paste it in here and hit enter. So after hitting enter, so you will have the following prompts. So just stick with the default ones. So we're going to use, of course, TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind CSS, the source directory. I'm not going to use it. We're going to just stick with the app directory. For the remaining questions, just stick with the default options. So then it's going to install all the dependencies needed to make sure that the project is working. So after doing this, all you have to do, after installing all the dependencies, just type in npm run dev and you are ready to go. The application is going to run. So as you can see, my application is already running and with the local host 3000. So you will have this default page provided by Next.js, and this is the code of it. Of course, we need to delete all of this code, so we're not going to need it. So we're going to just create an empty div like this, and we're going to get rid from the image uh, object, which is provided by Next.js to be able to optimize images. So after showing you how to be able to install Next.js, so it's very simple. The next thing that I'm going to show you is how to be able to install shadcn. So we're going to go to the shadcn website. So my connection is pretty slow these days, so I don't know why. So we're waiting to load the page. So in the shadcn, so we're going to go to the home page. So we're going to go to the installation and the Next.js, which is the framework that we're using. And the first step, we're going to copy this and we're go back to VS Code. And so I'm going to show you what I did and what you would have into the terminal when you hit enter. So after doing this, it's going to install all so it's going to verify if Next.js is installed, Tailwind CSS, validates the import alias, verifying the component.json, which is this file, which is the core element of shadcn, and then it's going to update the tailwind.config.js and also the global.css. So if we go to the global.css, so this is the code that has been added by shadcn. So to be able to make sure that um, all the theme, it's going to be unified inside our whole project, wherever that we are using, uh, or wherever the component that we're using inside the project. And also another thing that I did is I downgraded to the React 18 since it still have, so you may have this warning issue, which is this one. So to avoid this, since I'm not going to use any features or new features from React 19, I'm going to stick with the React 18. And to be able to do this, go to the package.json, sorry, and here just replace 18 instead of 19, and also make sure to place the types for the React to avoid having some mismatch and some errors with TypeScript if you let this 19 and you're using actually 18 React version 18 of React. So this is the setup that I did. And lastly, I'm going to show you, since I'm going to use Poppins font, which is the Poppin or the font that I use for all my projects. So it's very simple. Go to the layout.tsx and add the Poppins object from this package. And here we're going to create this constant with this object, and we're going to be adding all of these properties. And we're going to add the Poppins that variable inside the class name of the body tag. And finally, in the global.css, make sure to add the Poppins class. And we're going to use the variable that we created in here. So we're going to use it by using the var method and the CSS. So, and if you want to use, so I'm going to add here the class Poppins, which is the class that we created. And I'm going to add something in here and hit enter. And let's go back to the actual browser. And so as you can see, the font has been applied successfully. So this is how we can, this is the setup of our project. So the next thing that I'm going to add in the project is the navbar. So before we add the navbar to the application, so the next thing that we should be installing is the dark mode. So we're going to use shadcn, so they're providing a package to be able to add the dark mode to the project if you are using shadcn, of course. So just go to the dark mode, or you can go to the search bar and just type in dark mode. So eventually that's the page, and choose Next.js, of course. So this is the step-by-step guide to be able to install the dark mode. So we're gonna follow all the steps here. So the first thing that we should be doing, so we're gonna use since we're using the npm package. So just copy this. So go back to the terminal, and I'm gonna open up the terminal and paste the actual package. So it's going to be installing the package for us. So it's going to take a little bit of time because of my connection speed. It's a bit low. So after installing the package, as you can see, it has been installed successfully. So now let's go back to the page. So the next thing that we're going to be doing is creating this theme provider, which is a component that we are going to wrap our body uh, uh, tag in the layout.tsx. So let's copy this and so we're going to go back to the app folder. So here we're going to create the file theme provider.tsx and I'm going to paste the code and save the file. So let's go back to the page. So the first or the third step, as I said, we need to wrap the children with the theme provider that we just created. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to go to the layout.tsx and I'm going to take this part. I'm going to paste it in here. So we're having this red line because it doesn't know where to import the component. So I'm going to add it like this. So VS Code is going to do it for us to be able to import the component from the file that we created in here. And let's save the file. So let's go back to the page. So we're going to add this toggle. So all you have to do, just copy this code. So I've already created this and just paste it in here. So I'm going to do it again. And you will have these issues since it is complaining about these components because we didn't install yet this component, these components, the button and the drop-down menu. So let's do this. So let's go to the shadcn website and I'm going to look for the button. So all you have to do, just copy this and open up the terminal and hit enter. So it's going to install the components. I think it's going to create a new folder called components. So we are waiting to do this. So the button has been installed successfully. And as you can see, we're having a new folder called components. And inside of it, we're having the UI folder, and this is the button.tsx component. So this is the main component of the button, and this is the whole code. So as you can see, it's pretty lengthy, and all of this has been provided for us to be able to not focus on the UI and just focus on the features of the project and make the process of building the project a lot faster. So the next element that we need to install is the drop-down menu. So here, well, I'm going to search for the drop-down menu, and we're going to do the same thing, copy this, and so let me clear the terminal, and I'm going to paste the command line and hit enter, and it's going to do pretty much the same to be able to install a new component inside the components folder. So our drop-down component has been installed successfully, and notice right now we're having a new file. And as you can see, the errors gone, so nothing So there's no issue in the component. So we can be able to call this component successfully. So if we go to the page.tsx, so let's delete this and I'm going to add the component like this. So I think that the name of the actual component is the mode toggle. So I'm gonna just copy this or just let me do this and hit enter. And if we go back to the page, so as you can see, our component is working and our dark mode is working. So once we are going to add the navbar, so it's going to be added at the right side. So uh, anyway, our dark mode, as you can see, is working successfully. So let's move to the next part, which is building our navbar. So this is the header of the application. So it's very simple and basic header. So we're having the logo, the application, the name. So this is the name that I choose for the application, the button to be able to add a new task, and the drop-down menu that I showed you to be able to switch from light to dark mode and vice versa. So, so this is the navbar. And also I want to show you how to be able to change the colors. So to be able to do so, go to the theme section and click on customize, and you can be able to choose any color that you want. So I choose the rose color and click on copy code and copy all of this code and go to the global.css and just replace the default code with the code. Let's assume that this is the default code. Just delete this and so let me copy this again and paste it in here and save the global.css. So the next thing that I did is I created the new folder called components. So we're going to be adding all the components of the project inside this folder. And this is the file navbar.jsx. So here, so we are doing some couple of imports. So we're importing this for the icon and the use theme hook from the next theme package that we installed for the dark mode. And I'm going to show you why. So this is for the drop down dark mode toggle, and finally the button. So this is the functional component, the navbar, and here we are destructing the use theme to be able to access to the theme, so you can know which states that the theme is in. Uh, so uh, so this is what we are doing here. So if the theme is dark, we are going to use this black, this background black color and the border at the top. And by the way, those are just Tailwind utility classes. Otherwise, it's going to be background white. So we're going to use the background color and we're going to paste wherever returned in here inside the class name. So that's why we add in the backticks and the curly braces to make sure that this is going to be read as a variable, not as a string. And those are just the utility classes to make sure that this navbar is going to have uh, all the styling necessary to be able to make sure that we're going to have this layout for the navbar. So we're having the width is full and the height it's going to be fixed, the overflow hidden, the justify between, so to make sure that these elements are going to be positioned automatically like this, the pixel. So we added some padding at the left and at the right, and the bottom it's going to be we're going to have some border at the bottom, and finally the background color that I showed you. So next we're having the this component. It's going to render only the icon and the name. So here we're having the header tag with these utility classes. We're having this icon wrapper. So we're going to use the size 9, which is a utility class from Tailwind CSS, just to be able to shortcut stuff without using or adding more utility classes. So it's going to do this width and height with the 39 pixel each. The background is going to be primary, rounded, so it's going to be medium, flag, justify, center, and item center. So you can be able to center the icon within this icon wrapper. And this is the icon. And finally, this is the name of the application. So we're using the h1 tag with all of these utility classes, and we're using the board in another span because the word task is going to be bold, and this one it's not going to be bold. So, and of course, we need to import this right here. And finally, at the right side, we're having the Add Task button and the drop down. So right now, it's just a button because we need to add the dialog component for this. So we're going to do this later. And we're having the mode toggle component that I showed you when we installed the dark mode theme. So we're going to import the component like this. And we are going to make sure that these are going to be within one div to make sure that these elements are going to be positioned like this automatically, since we're using the justify between utility class. So this is how we can create the navbar, and also make sure to use the use client. So it should be a client component, and because we're using a use theme hook here, and of course, we should be able to import and render the navbar component. So all you have to do, go to the page.tsx and import or use the navbar component in here to be able to render it inside the home page. So after we added the navbar, the second element that I added all of these cards, these three cards. So we're having so this is the design of each card, and also we're having here this card is going to show the total number of tasks, the completed tasks, and the high priority tasks. And also, as you can see, the background, uh, it's going to have a kind of a slate color. So I'm going to show you how to create this. So first, inside the components folder, so I created the stats cards.tsx. You can call it whatever you want. So here we are going to import all of these elements. So the first thing that we need to do, since we're going to use the card component in our GSX, as you can see for each card, so we need to install the card component. So make sure to copy this and paste it in your terminal and hit enter, and you should have the card.tsx inside the components folder of shadcn. And also make sure to install React icons. So shadcn uses the Lucid React library, but also there are some icons that I love that are in the React icons library. So here, uh, just type in npm install React icons. So this is the name of the library. Hit enter and it's going to be installed. So after this, we are going to set the definition, or we're going to define the structure of each card. So we're having the title, the value, and the icon. So the icon is going to be of type React Node. And then we're having this array. So for each object, it's going to represent each card. So normally, what I should do here, I should add the single card type, and I'm gonna add the curly braces, the brackets, sorry, since it's an array. So here we're having the title, the value, and the icon based on the definition that we created for each card. So after we created our array, so then we're gonna use this stats map, and we're gonna map to each element. And we're going to call this single stat card, and we're going to pass for each object, we're going to pass it as a prompt that I called single card, as you can see here. And we're going to take this prompt and we're going to use it inside the single state stat card to be able to render each object. And here we're using some utility classes. So we're using the grid display, and the grid column is 3. And also we're using the media query just to make sure that this is going to be dynamic. As you can see, when the size of the window changes, so they are at the top of each other. So because we use the media queries here, a little bit of margin at the top, some gap between each card, and also a little bit of padding. And here I'm gonna explain what's inside the single stat card. So we're having the main tag or the main component, which is card that we installed from shadcn. So I did this so you can be able to when I turn the dark mode on, as you can see, it's gonna handle the changing of the color automatically since it is used or it is part of the shadcn ecosystem. So that's why I used the card component. So we're using the utility classes here, and we're getting from the shadow. So we added the shadow non-utility class or utility class, sorry. So first we're having the header and we're having the value. So here if we turn the light mode on back, so we're having the header, we're having the name of the card, and also the icon. So this is what we're having. So this is the name of the card, and this is the icon wrapper with all of these utility classes. So as you can see, it is pretty long. And finally, we're having the value. So we're taking each property of the single card object, and so we could destruct the single card in a constant, and then we can be able to use it. But if you want, you can be able to use directly the single card object and use the properties depending where you want to place this into the component. So this is basically how we can be able to create this, and also make sure to use the use client uh, to make it a client component. So if we go, so let me save the file. So we need to import this in the main functional component of our application. And here also I added the use theme hook like we did for the navbar since if so here as you can see the background it's not going to be white, so it's going to be this color background slate, and to be able to go with the actual next theme package that handles the dark mode. So we need to do this the same thing that we did for the nav bar. And here I added the Poppins font and also the this utility class uh, for the height. And finally, we're adding wherever that we're turning the background color constant inside the class name to be able to apply the color when we switch to the dark mode or the light mode. So after we added the statistic cores, the next element that I added is this card where we're going to be adding the search input and also the table, and also we're going to be adding the drop downs. But first I want to just show you how to create this, and then uh, I'm going to show you step by step all the other components. So the first thing that we need to do, we need to install the input component from shadcn. So again, just open up your terminal and add this command line in here and hit enter, and you should have the input.tsx inside the components folder. Sorry. So here, if we go to the page.tsx, so we're going to have the tasks area component. So this is the new component, and this component is coming from this file. So I created because we're going to be adding other components inside the task area. So just to organize things, I added the task area folder. So we're having the search input and the task area. So the search input, so it's very basic component. So we're going to use the input component from shadcn. So the type it's going to be text. I made the height a little bit. So I changed the height so to make the actual input to have the height a little bit bigger than the placeholder or the placeholder filter by task. And we need to export this because we need to use it inside the task area component. So these are the actual imports that we're going to use for this component. So this is the structure or the basic structure of the task area. So as you can see, I added some comment just to know uh, where like the structure, the structure of the components, but also I added these comments. So this is where I'm gonna place the future components. So we're having the card header, and also we're having the search input, which is the component that I just showed you. And in this part, we're going to show or to actually create the status drop down on the priority drop down. And here we're having inside the button the reset button with its icon. So we're going to use this button to be able to reset the filter. And also we're going to add here the drop down view columns to be able to eliminate or hide some of the columns if you want. And inside the card content, so we're going to add the actual table by using Tanstack table. And finally, at the bottom in the footer, we're going to add a component called the pagination area to be able to handle the pagination by using Tanstack. And we're going to import this component right at the bottom of the main component, which is the home component, to be able to render it like this. So after we created the task area, so the first component that I added is this drop down. So here we are going to show the priority uh, tags that the user filters by. And so when I click on here, as you can see, I'm going to see this drop down or this command component to be able to actually select the priority that I want. So the same that has been used in the task component, as you can see. So when I click on here, so we're going to have the actual tags that we filter by status. So now, of course, I'm just laying out things how they're looking, but when we start working on using the state management and making the application working, so we're going to have the just priority, and whenever the user clicks on here, then we can be able to show the medium or the high depending on what the user clicked on. So the first thing, we need to install some components. So here, if I open up the terminal, so you can find that I installed many components. So the first component that we should be installing is the command component. So this is the component that we are going to use to be able to show this part. So it is the command component. So make sure to just copy this and paste it in terminal and hit enter. So you should have the command.tsx inside the components folder. Next, the next component is the badge, and also, um, so let me open up the drop down. So we're having the command component, the popover component. So if we go to the popover component, so this is so the popover component, it's going to allow us to actually open up the command component right when we click. So they're just giving us an example just to show you what it does. So just copy this command line and paste it into your terminal. And next we need to install the checkbox. So go again into the shadcn website and copy this and paste it in terminal. Then we're having the separator and the badge. So again, type in here separator. So you should find this one, copy this and paste it in terminal, the batch component. So also we're going to use the batch component, which are these two elements. So they are using the batch component as I'm going to show you in the GSX. So here we are just importing all the elements needed for this component to be working. So the first thing, we are defining the structure of each stages and we're creating the array. So this is the array that we are creating. So the object is going to have the value, the label, and the icon is going to be of icon type, which is from the React icons library. So this is the component. So we're having the open, the set open to be able to handle the opening or the closing of the popover. So as you can see, we are going to add them here in the popover component. So uh, when the open state changes, it's going to call the set open. And implicitly, so this is the arrow function. Uh, if we hover over the on open change, it has this function signature that has the open of type Boolean. So eventually it's going to handle the open and the closing of the component automatically. So we're having the popover trigger uh, that is going to actually trigger wherever that we are putting inside the popover content. So I'm going to get into this. So here we're going to add this button. So this button, which is this whole element. So we're having the icon, the priority, we're having the separator and the tags. So here, the variant is going to be outline. We're not going to use the default variant of the button. And we're having the parent div here. So we're having the priority label with the icon, the circle plus icon. We're having the separator and we're having the badges. And so this is for the popover trigger. For the popover content, inside of it, you can add whatever you want that you want to show when we click on the popover. But here we're going to show the command components. So if we go back to the shadcn and open up the command component, so basically what I do is I just copy this and I paste it in the code. I'm just kind of tweaking it to actually get the results that I want. But the most important thing here is to understand what the code is doing. So first, so this is the structure. So you need to follow this structure to make this work. So we're having at the top the command component, the command input, which is the input that we're having in here. So that's the input to be able to actually search for the priority that we want. And here we're having the command list and uh, like next to it, we're having the command empty. So for example, if it doesn't find anything, it's going to return no results found. So it is handled for us by using the command empty tag. Then we're having the command group where we're going to be adding for each to be able to render each item. We're going to use the command item. So basically the difference between here and this component is because here we're going to use, so instead of just hard coding each object or each command item, and to make the code clean, we're going to use the status.map, and then for each object, then we're going to use the command item. So this is why we created the status array at the top, so we can be able to save some code here by using the map function. So then we're going to use the command item. So we're going to pass in the status here as a value. So we're going to use the value property of the status object and the value property of the command item tag. So here we're using the class name justify between because here we're having two elements. We're having this part and this part to make sure that they are going to look like this automatically. we're going to use the justify between, and the onSelect property, it's going to handle the selection whenever we actually click on the stages. So if we open up the log, so let's clear that out. And if I click on here, so as you can see, we're going to have, because I'm logging out the stages, the selected stages states, so we're going to log out the object that we clicked on. But eventually, when we are going to start making this functionable, all of this it's going to be updated. And of course, I'm going to explain everything that I did. And then, at the in the left or the right part, we're having the checkbox. So we're having the status icon, and we're having the label at the left part, sorry. So, and at the right part, we're having the number. Of course, this is going to be changing as well when we are going to add the statistic data, which are the tasks. So eventually, this is going to be updated. So this is practically the drop down, the priority drop down that we created. And as you can see, it is working smoothly and it is looking good. So after we created the priority drop-down, the next element that I added is the status. So as you can see, we're going to have the statuses that we want to filter by. And also I added this simple drop-down to be able to actually hide or show the icons. So let's go back to the VS Code, and I'm gonna start from the drop-down folder. So as you can see, I added the two files. So this one for the status drop-down, and basically we're gonna follow the same structure that we did for the priority drop-down. So it is pretty much the same. So the only thing that we're gonna change is the statuses array. So these are the objects that we're going to use, and basically we are going to follow the same pattern that we did for the priority dropdown. So I'm not going to explain this twice. And you could create one component and reuse it, but it's going to make things a bit more complicated. So that's why I added this, so it might be redundant for some of you, but just to make sure that things are simple, so that's why I created it in another component. And finally, we're having the view columns drop down. So basically, this is the actual component. So I didn't use the map function just to make things simple. But here I should create an array and also map through each element to be able to actually show each uh, each each item. But basically, what I did, I just went to the drop down menu um, website here, and I just so so let me probably I took this component. So this is the component that I took, and I pasted it in here. I just change the names actually. So we're gonna update this later on. We'll start making this functionable, or the whole application functionable. So this is basically how we created this part and this part. So the next element that we're going to be adding is the actual table. And the next thing that I added, as you can see, is the table. So this is the final version of the table. So we're having the task and the title, the status, the priority, and the date of creation. And in this part or in this column, we're going to be adding the drop down to be able to change some of the things in each task. And also when I click the uh, on the column, so we're going to have this drop down to be able to sort ascendingly or descendingly, or even if you want to hide the column. So it is the same if we go to the shadcn website, so the tasks. So we're going to have the same thing in here. So the only thing that is different is the columns or the icons, but it doesn't matter. So the most important thing here is to know how this is working. So the first thing that we're going to start from is this page, data table page. So they're giving us a really in-depth, sort of in-depth guide to be able to install the Tanstack table along with the table component provided by shadcn. So the first thing that we should be doing, we should be installing the table component and the task tag component. So make sure to copy these command lines. So I've already done this. So as you can see, I added the table component, but also the task tag React table library into the project. So after this, I'm going to, or the first step, we need to define the data. So since we're going to use only static data, we're not going to use the backend. So the first thing that I did, I created this folder called data and the task data. So this is the actual data along with the types of the elements that we're going to use in each task. So for the label, so we're going to use the union types along with the literal types for type safety. So the label is going to be only bug and feature and documentation. The priority is going to be low, medium, and high. And the status are going to, it's going to be all of these literal types. So for each task, so we're going to define it that way. The task ID, the title, the label, the is favorite. So if we go back to our website or to our application, so we're going to have this icon to be able to set a task as favorite or not favorite, something that I added that is not here. So just something that I added into the application. So we're having the priority. So the priority it's going to be of type priority. So to make sure that this priority only is going to allow this literal type. So that's why we defined this as the priority. And the status, so the same thing, we're going to use the status type that we defined in here. And the created date, it's going to be of type date. And of course, the tasks area, it's going to be of type tasks with the brackets. Uh, Telling the Typescript this is going to be an area of type task that we defined in here. And these are the objects that we are using um, to be able to show the table or all the tasks inside the table. So this is the first step and the second step. So if we close this, and if we go to the task area folder, so what I added the tasks column and also I added the tasks table. So let's start with the task column. So if we go back to their website, so the first requirement or the first thing that they are starting with is the column.tsx. Eventually, so it's a basic example. So, but I'm gonna show you what I did for our case. So let's open up the task column. So it's a pretty lengthy code, but in general, so I'm going to explain all of the functions and all of the code in here. So we're gonna start from the tasks column array, and so here we are going to define it as the task type that we created. So for each object is each column. So this is the first column. So we're going to use for the header. So the header property is this part. So we're going to use the checkbox and the name of the header. So this is what we are doing. So we're using the checkbox and here we're going to use the checkbox to be able to, so we're going to use the table parameter from this object to be able to actually select all of these elements when we click on. So to be able to do this, so this, it's going to be, so when we click on the check, so this is going to be triggered and this function or built-in function is going to be triggered to be able to select all of the rows. And here, So we're having the cell function which represents each cell. So here we're having the task column. Sorry, I said that this is part um, of the checkbox column, but it's another column which is this object. And next we're having the is favorite. So the header it's gonna be empty, and we are gonna only use the cell function. And here we're going to access to each row, and we're going to extract the icon by using the row that original that is favorite. So if it is true, then we're going to use the star icon, and then we're going to return. So if this, because it might be undefined, so if this not undefined, then we're going to use the icon with the size 14. And this is basically what we're having says the row or the is favorite property row has is true. And we're having the title. So for the header, we're going to call the sortable header. So here, as you can see, all of these columns are going to have the actual drop down to be able to sort it. And to avoid duplicating the code, as you can see, we're going to call the same component called the sortable header, which is going to have two properties or two props, the colon, which is coming from the function, and the label. So, and the same thing that I'm doing for the status, the same thing that I'm doing for the priority. But if we go to the sortable header, so this is the actual code as you can see. So here where you're turning the drop down. So if we click here, as you can see, we're having the drop down with the three elements, ascendant, descendant, and the hide element at the bottom. So we're going to start from the top. As I said, this is accepting the colon and the label, and this is the definition of the prompts. So the colon is going to be of this type, and the label is going to be of type string. So first, we're going to make sure that if this is sorted, and here we're going to use the ternary operators. So if the is sorted is true, we're going to use the ascendant. If this is equal to ascendant, we're going to use this icon. Otherwise, else, if the equal to descendant, we're going to use this icon. If the is sorted is not defined yet, so we're going to use the arrow up and down um, icon. So the same thing that we're having here, because it is not defined it, so we're going to use this icon. But as soon as I click on here, as you can see, this is going to be undefined, and we're going to have the descendant icon, and the color is going to be changing just to tell the user which column that is currently sorted. And finally, we're going to use this whole code to be able to actually show or render the drop down. So here we're going to add the label. Here we're going to add the ascendant for each object. So I should use a map function. So when I click on the ascendant item, so here this is going to be triggered. So we're going to use the column that toggle sorting. So it's going to be true. And for the descendant, it's going to be false. And here we're having just the icon for the item for the hide with its icon. So we're gonna do some updates when we start making this fully functionable. So let's continue with the other elements. So we're having the title, we're having the status. So for the status, first, we're going to access to the status icon. So we're having this function to be able to actually render each icon based on the status. So if it is equal to backlog, we're going to use this icon. If it is equal to cancel, we're going to use for this icon, and the same for the other statuses. And here for the priority icon, we're doing the same thing. So we're using the switch case to actually return the icon based on the priority. So because we're gonna reuse these functions, and so this is how we're gonna use them for the status. So we're going to use this function, and depending on the status that is coming from the row, it's going to return the appropriate icon, and we're going to save it inside the status constant, and we're going to make sure since this is could be undefined or null. So we're going to make sure that is not, and then we're going to actually use whatever the icon that we're having in here. And we're going to just return the status inside the span. And so if we click on here, so we're gonna show the status along with the icon, which is this span. So the same thing that we did for the priority, just to save some time. And for the created at, so we're gonna extract the date of creation, and we're gonna use the format date to be able to actually format it like this. And the format date, it's gonna be this function. So this is the function that we're gonna use to be able to format the date like this. And finally, we're having this part to be able to show the drop down for each task that we are going to build. So this is basically our task table. So the next thing that we're going to be adding is the pagination. And as you can see at the bottom of the task area, we're having the pagination. So we're having how many rows has been selected, and we're having this select component to be able to select the elements, how many rows that you want to see in the table, and the navigation buttons to be able to go from one page to another. So it is the same that we're having at the bottom. So the first thing that we should be doing, we should be installing the select component by copying this and paste it in your terminal and hitting enter. So you should have in the components folder, so the select.tsx. So this is what we're going to use this for this part. So now let's go to the task area. So I created a new folder called the task pagination, or the pagination folder. So we're having the page pagination area. So let me delete all of this. So this is the actual code. So we're having the printf. So here we're having the span tag to be able to show how many rows has been selected. And here we're having, so because this parent div is separated into two components to make sure that these elements are going to be aligned at the extremities of each of the tables. So that's why we added like them, and we added the justify between and the item center to be centered, so that they can to be centered vertically. So here we're having the pagination selection, which is another component. So instead of just adding the component in this, uh, so I created another component called the pagination selection, and I imported it from here as the pagination selection component. And then we're having inside this div all of the navigation buttons. So as you can see here, I'm just commenting this when we start working on the table and making it working. So we're gonna use it, the table object. So we're gonna add it as a prompt. So just to not lose this code, so I'm just commenting this out. So when I start working on this, I'm gonna comment out all of these, and it's gonna work. So the navigation are gonna be working. So for each button, so we're having 4 buttons, and this is what we're having. So this is for the first button, the second button, the third, and the final button. And finally, we're having the pagination selection, which is a very simple component for this part. So you can look at this, how it is working into the shadcn, uh, into the shadcn, or into the page in the shadcn website. So what I did, just copy this and I just tweak things. So here we're using the map function to be able to actually see the numbers like this. So instead of hard coding each element. And finally, we need to go to the task area.tsx, add the footer, and we're going to add the pagination area. So one last thing for the table that we're going to need to add is the actual drop down for each task. So whenever I click on this, so if we go to the tasks component, and when you click on here, so we're gonna have this drop down. So this is what we are gonna be adding inside our project. So the final thing in the table that we're going to be adding is the drop down. So right now, as you can see, we're having the three dots column or icon. So when I click on it, so we're going to have this beautiful drop down. So it is the same drop down that I used in here. So the only thing that I added is the icons. So when I hover over the label, so we're going to have bug feature documentation. So we're going to make this work, but also I added some color into the delete group or the delete item. So let's go back to the VS Code. So first, this dropdown, it's going to be a combination of two elements. So we're having this, and also we're going to have another dropdown kind of for the label. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So here, I created the task drop-down folder. So as you can see, just to make things organized, so we're going to actually, instead of putting all the code in one place, so uh, we are going to divide it into multiple files. So first we're having the constants.ts. So here we are going to add the constants. So this is the menu items. So here we're having all the objects, the edit, the make copy, and the favorite. And this it's going for the so this area it's going to be for the label. Just for organizing purposes, so we're going to store all of these areas in one file. So then we're having the menu items, the sub label menu, and the task dropdown. So let's start first from the task dropdown. So here we're having all of the elements that we need to import to make this functional component work. So here we're adding the select label states where whenever we click uh, on the item, we need to store whatever that we are clicking in to be able to use it later on. So this is the code of the dropdown. So we're having the structure, the shadcn structure, so the dropdown menu and the dropdown menu trigger, the button. So here we're just adding the three dots icon from, I think from React icons. So let me see. So this is from the React icons. And then for the drop-down menu content, so we're going to use the drop-down menu group where we're going to actually use the menu items area that I showed you and iterate through each object. And you for each object, from the menu items area, we're going to pass or to pass the item inside the menu item component that I'm going to show you. And then we're having the separator, which is this one. So all of these items are in one group. So we're having the separator, then the we're having um, the label submenu, which is for the label. So I'm going to show you how this is working. And finally, we're going to reuse the menu item functional component to be able to actually render the delete item. So as you can see, it is a combination of sub or child components. So just for organization purposes, so I made it like this. So the first thing, so you don't have to create this from the start. So first you need to create the whole component and then chop it down into sub functional components. So this is what I did. So let's go first to the menu items. So this is the menu items as you can see. So it's going to accept the icon, the label, the shortcut, and the class name. So this is what we are doing into the main functional component. So we are going to pass inside of the menu item functional component all of these elements so you can be able to use them inside this menu item. And this is responsible for rendering each element that we're having. So we're having the icon, the actual label, and also the shortcut. And also I added this class name just as an optional because we're going to reuse this into the delete item. So to be able to actually change the red color. So that's why I added the class name as optional into the prompt. And this is basically the drop-down menu items. So we're having the icon, the label, the shortcut. So we want to make sure that this is not undefined whatsoever. So then we can be able to use safely this drop-down menu shortcut element from shadcn. So next I'm going to show you the sub label menu.tsx. So it's going to have the value and the on value change. So we're going to add this as a callback function. So whenever we click on here, so this is going to trigger the on value uh, callback function that we're going to use it inside the actual parent component of it to be able to update the state. So we're going to work on this, but now I want to show you just structure of the functional component. And so this is the structure. So we're having the drop-down menu sub, and here we're having the icon, the label, and here we are going to add the or to use the label options area to map to each element, and use the drop-down menu radio item. So one thing that I didn't show you. So here when I click, so we're gonna have the drop down or the radio group here. So whenever we are clicking on the element. So this is basically how we can be able to create the actual drop down for each task. So after we created the UI of the main page of the application, the next element that I added is the dialog to be able to add the new task. So when I click on the button, so we're going to have this wonderful dialog, and we're going to use shadcn to be able to build this very quickly. So we're going to have the title, we're going to have the status, so it's a drop down to be able to change the status, the task priority, and the task label. So we're gonna stick with these labels as uh, so since we are gonna work or be inspired from the task component and the shadcn. And finally, we're having the close and add new task button. So let's go back to the VS Code to show you how I created all of this. So the first thing, so I'm going to show you the structure of the files. So I created a new folder called task dialog, and we're going to have the main file. I just called it task dialog, and here we're having the subcomponents for each element. We're going to put it in its own file. So let's start by the actual file. So we're having all the imports needed. So we're having the dialog the components that we're going to use from the dialog component, which we're going to use in the following structure. And here we're having the separator, the button, and we're importing all the components inside the sub-components folder for each element. So first we're having the trigger button, so it is a button, and then we're having the dialog content. So inside the dialog content, we're having the header, so the title and the description. So we're having a separator to be able to create this separator at the top. And then after this, we're going to create a div, and inside this div, we're going to create all the or add all the components. So here we are creating another div just to make sure that these two elements are going to be positioned in a grid position. and the same thing that we did for the remaining elements, which are the task priority and the task label. So, and finally, we're having at the footer the close button. So it is a built-in component dialog close. So eventually it's going to close the dialog automatically when I click on the close button. And finally, we're having the add new task button. So we added it as a type submit since we're going to wrap everything within a form tag. So when we start working with the React Hook form library to be able to track all the inputs and the fields that we're having inside the dialog. So now let's go to the subcomponents. I'm going to start by the easiest one, which is the task title. So the task title, so all of the components here have the label. So it has the label, it has also the input and also the error message. So this is what we're having. We are returning as a GSX. So we're having the label with these utility classes, the input, and also the p tag. So here we are going to add the actual error. So now let's go to the second component, which is this drop down, the task status. So this is the file that is responsible for this. So here we are importing these icons. We're importing uh, the task type since we're going to use it. So I'm going to show you why we did so. And also we're using these components, these select components to have this drop down. So here we are going to create our array called statuses, and this is the type for each object, the value, and the icon. So here we are going to extract all the necessary literal types that we created. So if we go to the file, so the status, it has all the literal types with the union types. So to be able to extract this, so without having to use or reuse the status, we can be able to add it just like this. So we're gonna take it from the task type and we're gonna add the actual property within the brackets, and then we can be able to access to all the literal types that we created inside the status. So when, for example, just to show you what we did, so when I did this, so it's going to actually give me only the actual types that we added inside the status. So this is why we define it like this, just for type safety. So for each value, it has its own icon, so that's why we added the icons at the top. And here we are going to, inside the functional components, so we're going to create a state where we save the status that we clicked on, and we're gonna assert the type. So the same thing that we did that I explained. So here it's going to give me again the types. And also it's gonna make the coding experience a lot easier, and also you will not run into problems and bugs later on when you want to run the application. So that's the power of TypeScript. So here we're having the label, and here we're having the select component. So here we're having the value property and the on value change. So whenever I click on one of the items, as I'm going to show you, so the on value change, it's going to be triggered. So we are going to set the value parameter as of type status, and then we're going to update the selected status with the value that we changed with. And then we're having the trigger, so which is the selected value. And then we're having the content. And so we're going to map through each status inside the object in within the select group, so we can be able to render each element. So here the value, it's going to be the status that value. So the status is coming from the map function. So we're having the status dot icon and also the status dot value. And also we're adding some utility classes to style our item. So this is basically how we created the status. So it is very easy thing to create, and also the checkbox that's going to be handled for us by the shadcn logic. So now we're going to go to the task priority. So it's going to be pretty much the same logic. So let me close this. I'm going to save the file, and then I'm going to go to the task priority. So as you can see, we are going to follow the same structure. So the only thing that is going to be different is the priority. So, and also the objects. So we're going to have just low, medium, and high. And as you can see, the code follows the same structure. So the naming, it's going to be different a bit. And also, as I said, so we're going to use the property, the priority type instead of using the status. And for the remaining code, it is pretty much the same. And also for the task or the tasks label, so as you can see, it's going to be the same. So the only thing that is different is, so here we're going to access the label property, and for the remaining code, as I explained, so uh, it's gonna be pretty much the same. So this is how we can be able to create our dialogues. And once now we create the UI of our whole application, so we're going to start making this application functionable. So the next feature that we are going to add is the search of the tasks. So here, as you can see, when I type in stuff, so we're going to have live search, as you can see. So because I'm typing fix, so I'm going to have the title or the task that includes the fix word. And if something that has not been found, I'm going to have this simple error. So, and also we're going to use Tanstack React table. So let's go back to the VS Code, and the first component or library that we're going to be adding for state management is npm install Zustand. So we're going to use Zustand for state management. So we're going to use it for the query, since this part is another component and this part is another component. So to be able to avoid using prop drilling, so we're going to use the state chat management to be able, so whenever we are typing, we're going to save the character that we are typing in in a state called query, and this state is going to be used inside the task area where we are using the React table to be able to access to the query and actually do the filtering. So first, I created a new folder called hooks. So this is the use query store, and this is how we can be able to create a context, and then the in Zustand it is called store. So first we import the create element from the Zustand library, and then this is how we're going to create our store. So I called it use query store. So we're going to use the create element, and so here we are going to define the structure of the our store, how it's going to be. So we're having just two elements, query and the set query, and this is the signature of the function, and this is the type of the query. So it's going to be string, and the function is going to accept a parameter, which is query of type string, and it's not going to return nothing, meaning that it's going to be a simple function. So the query, so we're going to set the default value, so the query is going to be empty, and the set query is going to update the query, which is this one, by using the set method, which is in provided by Zustand. So there is a very simple store to create with Zustand. So the next thing that I did, I created this function. So this function is going to be linked to the use React table. So you will understand why we did this function, but the functions in the React query, so the filter functions will accept three arguments by default. So we're going to just use the row and the filter value. So we're going to access to the title by using the row that get value, and here make sure to add the actual key that we added in the task column.tsx. So it has to be the same key that we used. So we're gonna, because we're gonna search by the title, so that's why I added the title and the query. So the query, it's going to be taken from the filter value. So we are going to convert it to string, and then it's going to be a lowercase, and we're going to return this wherever that we're having in this manner. So this title function, it's going to be used inside the use React table. So if we go to the task area, and if we go to the tasks table, so basically we're going to be adding some of the elements here inside the use React table. So we're going to be adding the colon filters, so these states, and also we're going to add the get filter row model. I think this function is going to handle the filtering and the on colon filter change. So it's going to be linked to the set colon filters and the state. So make sure to add the state object, and inside of it, we're going to be adding the colon filters. So the actual filter, so the most advanced and the challenging part in the React query table is the filtering, and unfortunately they're not providing a very well organized and very simple to use documentation. So it took me a while to be able to understand, and the way how they are engineering this is a little bit hard advanced, and it's going to be overwhelmed for many of people who just getting started with this, especially it uses TypeScript heavily, so it's gonna add a layer of complexity. So here we're gonna add the filter function property, and we're going to add the title filter. So this title filter, so this is the function that we're gonna be adding um, in the filter functions. So if we go at the top, as you can see, we're going to import it from this file. And also we need to add this interface, this title filter interface in the Tanstack module. So this is very important to add this. And basically, so I think that I explained everything in here. And finally, we're going to have this use effect hook, and it's going to be dependent upon the query. So the query, it's going to be used from the use query store that I showed you. So here we're going to create the new filters of type colon filter state. And just to show you how this colon filter looks like in the console log, so let me console log this, and I'm going to save the file. So let's open up the console log. So I'm going to access to the console log. Let's clear this. So when I type something in here, so this is the array. So this is the colon filter array. So it is a very simple object, the title and the value of the query. So this is what we are doing in the use effect. So only if the query is changing, we're going to push the object with the new value of the query. And then we're going to update the set colon filter. So the reason why they are doing it like this, like an array, because as we will see, we are going to add two more filters, the status and the priority. So when we're going to add the status, we're going to have another object with the ID called status, and the value, it's going to be these values that we are checking. In here, we're going to start working with the status. So once you understand how this is working, so you can add pretty much any filter that you want, so it's going to follow the same principles. So let me delete this console log, and this is basically how we can be able to create our first filter. And finally, so this is something obvious. We need to link the query in the set query with the input. So the value is going to be linked to the query, and the set query is going to be linked to the on change event listener of the input. So when this is changing, So whenever we are changing anything in the input, so it's going to change the query and the set query, and by that, it's going to handle and actually execute all the filtering inside this use React table. So next I added the priority filter. So here, as you can see, when I click on low, so I'm gonna only show the task that has the priority as low. So when I want to just show the tasks that have low and medium, so I can click on this. As you can see, we're having only two tasks because um, they have the medium and the low priority. And also we're gonna be adding uh, the numbers to calculate automatically how many tasks that are referring to each priority. And when I click on reset, so actually the filter it's gonna uh, so the filter it's going to end, and also we can be able to actually show only the tags or the filter and the tags like this. So as you can see, everything is working fine. And also, along with that, we can be able to, as this filter is working, we can actually filter even further by the title. So let's go back to the VS Code. So the first thing that I did, I created a new store. So it's going to so for this store, we are going to actually store the priorities that we are checking, and also we're going to use its own setter. So this is basically the store. So this is the interface. So the checked priorities, it's going to be of type priority, and the set checked priority, it's going to be this signature. It's going to accept the priorities as a parameter of type priorities as an array. And inside the store, so the checked priority is going to be an empty array first, and then this is how we're going to update our checked priorities by using the set method from actual Zustand. So then I'm going to show you how to be able to link this with the priority dropdown. So the priority dropdown, I did so many things to be able to change the dropdown. So the first thing that I did, I got rid from the select priority. So instead, we're going to use the checked priorities, which is the status that I just show you inside the new store. And here we're having the open and the set open. So these values or these states, we're going to use them here at the bottom of the pop over. So now I'm going to show you all the functions that we're having in here. So as you can see, I added some comments to not get lost and also to know each function that it's doing. So we're having the first function, which is the update the selection. So this is going to update the array whenever we check an element. So if we go to the GSX, we're going to start from the GSX, and here, so this function is going to be linked to the onSelect event listener. So whenever we select on the command item, so this is going to be triggered, and we're going to pass inside of it the priority that label. So if we go all the way up into the function, so this is the label, it's going to be of type string. So first, what we're going to do here, we're going to do some Typescript stuff. So because the label is a string, so it needs to be casted as a priority. But to make sure that this casting is valid, so and to not run into any troubles, first, we are going to create an array of the valid priorities by using the priority type. So those are only values that we're going to be using. And here we are going to check if the label is part of the priorities. So if it is not, we are going to exit the function, and then we are going to return this console log. So these are just TypeScript stuff. So it may add a little bit of complexity to your code, but when you start working with TypeScript, you will know why this is very, very handful. And then we can be able to safely cast the label as priority. So the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to check if the element that we checked, or so if we click on low, for example, so we want to check if this is included in the checked priorities. So if it is, we are going to delete it by using the filter method. Otherwise, we are going to be add it, and here we're going to add this syntax, which means that we are going to just keep all the previous elements, and then we're going to add the priority next to all of the other elements. Then we're going to update the checked priorities by using the set checked priorities. So this is the function to be able to add or delete. So I'm going to console log this just to show what happens whenever I click on the priorities. So let me open up the console log. So when I click on low, as you can see, I'm going to have an array, the low and the array. So the same thing if I click on medium. So when I click on medium again, so it's going to be deleted. So this function is going to handle this for us. So, this function, we're gonna count how many tasks that have the priority. So here we're using the use memo hook just for optimization. So you don't have to do this because we're not gonna have a lot of data, but just to know how the use memo hook works. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to make sure that the tasks is if it is empty or if it is null. So then we're going to actually just return the priorities array. And then we're going to do our counting. So the counting is very simple. So we are going to filter the tasks by their priority. So this is for the count by low. So we're going to do this, and to be able to access to the number, we're going to use the length. So we're doing the same thing for the medium, for the high. And then we are going to return the actual values by using the priorities area.map function to be able to access to each element. And then we're going to use the switch method. So we're going to access to the value of each property. So if this is low, so we're going to return so we're going to change the count priority by the state or the variable, which is the count by low. So the same thing for medium and the same thing for the high. So this is going to be dependent upon the task. So the use memo hook, it works like pretty much the same like the use effect hook, but the difference here, it's going to return a value. So then we can be able to use this priority hook, and if we go at the bottom in the um, in the GSX, so we can be able to use it and actually access to the count state because we added it in, we updated inside this use memo hook. So this is basically how we can be able to update this, and also inside the checkbox, so the check that's going to be dependent if the priority that label is included inside the checked priorities. So since the checked is a Boolean, meaning true or false, so this if this is true, so that it's going to be checked, otherwise it's going to be unchecked. So this is basically how we can be able to update the this drop down. And finally, I'm going to show you how we can be able to just show the badges or the tags that we selected. So here, so this is the actual statement where to be able to do so. So we're going to make sure that the checked priorities length is more than 0. So, and then we are going to add the separator, and then we're going to use the checked properties area to map to each element, and we're going to use the badge functional component from shadcn, and we're going to use the checked property inside each object in the checked priority. So this is going to be a priority type. So I hope that I explained this. So as you can see, it is a very lengthy code, but you understand how this is working, even though that it seems very easy to build, but as you can see behind the scene, there is a lot of code to create this. And finally, when I click on the reset, so it's going to be deleted. So all you have to do, go to the task area.tsx, and here inside this button, the reset button, so I added this on-click event listener, and uh, all it does is it updates the checked priorities and an empty array. So we're gonna use this from this store that we created inside the hooks folder. So after we added the priority filter, the next filter that I added is the status. So when I click on the drop down and let's click on the to do. So as you can see, our filter is working, and now we are seeing the actual filter or the element that we filtered by. So when you click on the progress, so we're going to see both tasks that have the progress, the in progress and the backlog. And also when I click on the reset, as you can see, so the filters are going to be reset. And also I added more tasks just to show that both priority and status are working. So when I click on the reset, both are going to be reset. So let's go back to the VS Code. And first I'm going to show you. So we're gonna follow the same step that we did for the priority. So meaning that first we need to create a new store by using Zustand, where we're gonna save the elements that we check. So this is what we did. So we created our interface. So the check status is going to be of type status as an array, and the set check status to be able to update this state. And here we're going to use the create element from Zustand to be able to actually create our store. So the check status is going to be an empty array uh, by default, and then we're going to use the set check status to be able to update this actual state. So after we did this, the next thing that I added is the filter function. So I added this filter function that we're going to use inside the use React table. So it is pretty much the same function that we did for the priority filter. So the only thing that is going to be changing is the status. Um, so after we created our filter, so the next thing, we're gonna go to the task area, and also we're gonna go to the tasks table. So we're gonna add some stuff in here. So the first thing that we're gonna do, we're going to add the checked status array because we're gonna use it inside the use effect hook, but also we're going to use the status filter, the function that I just showed you. And here inside the use effect hook, so we're going to do the same thing that we did for the priority. So we're going to check if this checked status dot length is more than 0, then we're going to add this object inside the new filters before we can update the column filters. So just to show you how this would look like. So if we console log this, so let's console log the new filters, and I'm gonna open up the console log. So, and I'm gonna click on this. So here, as you can see, we're gonna have our object, and the value is gonna be an array because we defined the value as an array. So when I click on progress, and if I go to the same object, so the array, it's going to have the value to do and the in progress. And by with the use React table hook from Tanstack, so it's going to do the filtering for us. So that's why we defined this function inside the filter functions property, which is a built-in property inside the use React table. And of course, we need to add this check status as a dependency. So once we set up the filter logic inside the React table, of course, we need to update our dropdown. So whenever we are clicking on the element here, this is what we are gonna see. And if we uncheck this, so the separator is gone, but also the tags that we unclicked. So, and also we're going to use the same logic that we did for the priority, meaning here, first, we are going to import these states from the use check status store. And then we're having this function. So this update function, it's going to be linked to the onSelect function. So, and also we're going to pass down this function, the status.label, to be able to know which element that we clicked on. So the first thing that we're gonna do, because we're gonna cast the label as status since the label is going to be string. So I did the same thing just to make sure that we are safe. We're gonna validate this label first based on this array, then we can be able to safely cast it as a status. And then we are going to check if this label that we clicked on is included inside the array, the check status. So if it is, so we're going to delete it, meaning that when we clicked on it, so it's already happened in uh, in the array, so it's going to be deleted. Otherwise, we're going to add the actual status, and then we're going to update the checked status. So when this is updated eventually in the task table, since this is updated because this is added as an array dependency, so it's going to actually trigger this part to be able to by itself trigger the filtering function inside the use React table. So here, so the count status, so we're going to use it to be able to actually count the tasks that has the filter backlog, the status backlog, to do, canceled, and done, and in progress. And we're using the use memo hook because you can't use the use effect. Use effect doesn't return a value, but use memo hook runs pretty much the same as use effect hook, but it returns the value, or it returns something that we can be able to use to inside the GSX. So here we are going to use this inside the GSX. So this is the array, and in this array we're having the latest updated values that we can use to actually show the numbers here, the real numbers that are coming from the task array. So this is why we used it. So the GSX is pretty much the same that we used inside the priority filter. So I'm not gonna go through this twice. And this is basically how we can be able to create our status filter. So after we completed the filter section, so the next thing that I want to show you is a little update in the data. So, and also I want to show you when the application is first loaded. So we're going to have this skeleton, then we can be able to access to the data. So the way how we're going to use the area is going to be a little bit different because we're going to simulate the fetching of the data, and we're going to use the set timeout, and also we're going to use Zustand. So let's go back to the VS Code, and just to show you what I'm talking about, here inside the use tasks data store, so because we're not going to use the back end, we're going to just focus on the front end. So we're going to use set timeout to be able to actually simulate the fetching of the data. So this is the store that we are gonna create. So I'm gonna start from here because we can be able to see the structure of our store. So we're having the tasks, the set. So the task is gonna be of type tasks as an array or null. The selected task is gonna be of this one we're gonna be using for editing the task. So just ignore this one and this one. And we're having the set tasks to be able to update the tasks array and the fetch method, which is a promise of type void, meaning that it's not going to return anything. So the task is going to be first by default as null. So ignore this one, and we're having the set task to be able to update the task that we are going to use in our project. And also we're having the fetch tasks. So here we're going to use the try and catch block. And as I said, we're going to use the promise of type void. And then after 1000 milliseconds, meaning 1 seconds, we are going to update the tasks array by using the set method with the with the tasks with the tasks area that is coming from the task data, which is this file. So this is basically how we can be able to fetch or simulate the fetching of the data. So it's a pretty straightforward code and it's very easy to set up. So after we did this, so we're going to do some minor adjustments in our code. So let me close all the tabs, and I'm gonna start from the tasks, or I'm gonna start from the page.tsx, which is the home page of our application. So here to be able to actually call the fetch tasks, so you can be able to update the tasks state. So we need to use it from the store, and then we're going to use this use effect hook. So whenever the home functional component is mounted, meaning that the application is working, then we're going to call this function, and then it's going to update the tasks state that we can be able to use inside the task area.tsx. So if we go to this file again, as you can see, we are going to access to the tasks state, and here at the bottom, so we're going to add this turn operator. So if the tasks is null, so as I said, as I showed you, it could be tasks of type tasks or null. So if it is null, we're going to call the table skeleton component. And so this is the actual file to be able to create the skeleton, and also make sure to install the skeleton component from shadcn. So if we go here, just type in skeleton here and just copy this and paste it in terminal to be able to access to the skeleton components like this. So we're having the table, so the t head, the table head, and we're having the table body. So after this, so when the table is not null, then we can be able to, or filled, then we can be able to safely access the tasks table component. And this is what is happening in our application. So first it's going, we're going to have the skeleton because the task state is null. Then we can be able to access to the table since the tasks is filled with the data. And also, finally, we're going to do some minor adjustments inside the priority drop down and the status drop down. So instead of using directly the tasks from the static data, so we're going to use it from the use tasks data store. So the same thing that I did for the status drop down. So we're going to access to the tasks array or state from this store. So this I should did this before I start creating the filters, but so I have to do this now because we're gonna rely on it when we are gonna add and delete and modify, especially when we're gonna work on this drop down to be able to modify and update each task. So the next feature that I added is the ability to hide the columns if you want to. So when I click on view and I click on status, so it's going to be hidden. And also um, we can be able to hide it just from here. And if we want to show it back, all we have to do is just click on the status. So there is a sync between the table and this drop down. But for the title, we're not going to be able to hide the title, which is the main element in our table to be able to filter by and also to show the tasks. So let's go back to the VS Code. And so the first thing that we are going to be doing inside the tasks column, specifically inside the sortable header. So here we are going to add this on-click event listener column that toggle visibility. So it is a built-in function from Tanstack to be able to actually hide the actual column. And only if the label is different than the title, since we're using the sortable header as a reusable function um, in every column, in every object. So it's going to actually ignore the title and do it for the remaining um, columns. So after we did this, so we're going to do some modification inside the view columns drop down. So here, as you can see, um, the actual file or code, it's going to be completely different. So here we are going to accept the table from the parent component. And we're going to use this table. So because we're going to use it in here to be able to actually hide the column that we want. So we're going to use all of these functions, the get all columns from Tanstack, and we're going to use the dot filter column to be able to actually uh, hide the column. So after we did this, we're going to call this component inside the tasks area. So here in the tasks area, as you can see, we're going to use the table. But one adjustment, a big adjustment that I did since we're going to use the table in this component. So because the use React hook table is inside this tasks table, so what I did, I took it one layer up and I put all the code that handles the change inside the hook in here. So as you can see, all the code that was inside. So let me go to the tasks table. So the task table, so right now uh, is it doesn't have a lot of code because we took all the logic into the parent component. So, and basically what I did, so instead of using the data, so we're going to use the table. So I just updated the data table prompts and I added the table in here. And also make sure because the names are going to be the same for the table from the shadcn component and the type from Tanstack. So I named it as a shadcn table and I took this and I put it in here into the GSX. So let's go back to the tasks area.tsx and also I did a change inside the data. So we're going to use the tasks. So if it is null, it's going to be an error. And the columns, we're going to use the tasks column from this file. So basically all the other code, it's going to remain the same. And then we can be able to use this table and pass it down to this drop-down view column component. So this is basically the change that I did to make sure that the view or the hiding of the columns work correctly. So now we are going to start working on updating the task. And the first feature that we're going to be adding is to be able to make a task favorite or unfavorite. So here, depending on the state of the task, whether it's favorite or not. So we're going to see this changing. So because this is already favorite, so we're gonna have the in favorite. But if we go to a task that is not favorite, so we're gonna have or set it as favorite. So when we click on it, so as you can see, we're gonna have this star icon, meaning that this is set as favorite. But when I click on the drop down again where I'm going to have the in favorite. And if I want to make this unfavorite, I click on it. So it's going to update the favorite property and the star, it's gone. So we're going to work on this feature. So first, the first step that we're going to be doing, so we're going to start from the tasks column .tsx. So here, what we are going to do, we are going to use this function because here, so I already showed you in the use tasks data store, I showed you the selected task. So here we're going to use it to be able to actually store the task that we clicked on in the selected task so we can be able to use it to actually update its value to know which task that we clicked on. So in the tasks column, so since we can't be able to use a custom hook inside the array, so what we did, we are going to create a function and we're going to pass down the task as a prompt. And here we can be able to actually call the tasks drop-down component. So the reason why we did so, so we can be able to use the set selected task. So here in the tasks drop-down functional component, we did an update. So we're going to create these two callback functions. So when this is open, so we're going to update the selected task by the task that is coming from the prompt. Otherwise, when it is closed, it's going to be null. And to make this callback function working, so we're going to go to the tasks drop-down functional component. So first we need to add the signature of each callback function, and these callback functions are going to be triggered dependent on the open value inside the open change event listener. So when we open the drop-down, so this it's going to trigger, and so if the open is true, then we're going to actually call the open on open callback function. What it's going to call this as a result, and then update the selected task with the task that is coming from its parent component, which is this part. And when this is false, so it's going to do this, the same thing, but now we are going to trigger or call the on close callback function. So that's the first update that I did. And the second update is if we go to the menu items.tsx, or let's go to its to the main component, which is tasks dropdown. So here, as you can see, um, I added the selected task from the use tasks data store, but also instead of using the menu items constant, so then we're going to use it inside the menu items array state and with its setter because what we want here when we open up the drop down, we wanna actually show the opposite of the favorite state. So if it is false, so we want to show this as favorite. So when the favorite is true, we want to show this as unfavorite. So this is what this use effect hooks does. So actually we're going to use directly the set menu items array, and we're going to use the previous array, and then we're going to loop through each item. And here I added a new property called kind. So if we go to the types, so as you can see, I add the kind just to know whether we are going uh, to actually uh, click on the favorite, the copy, or the edit, or the delete. So I added this, and also inside the constant.ts. So as you can see, I added the kind property. So this is the edit, this is the copy, and this is the favorite. So that's why we saw the. So I want to make sure that we are going to access to the element that is for the favorite. So this is what the if statement does. So we're going to check if the kind is equal to favorite. Then we're going to update the object. So here we're going to only update the label depending on the selected task. So if it is favorite, we're going to show the unfavorite. Otherwise, we're going to show the favorite. So, and this is going to be dependent upon the selected task state. So after doing this, um, we are going to go to the menu items.tsx, and in here we're going to call all of these elements from the store, and we're going to add the on-click event listener. So whenever we click uh, on any item in here, so this is going to be triggered. So this handle menu items click event listener I added inside the util.ts just to organize stuff. So those are the properties or the components or the prompts that we're going to be using for this function. And we're going to use the switch method or case based on the kind. So if it is favorite, so then we are going to actually trigger all of this code to be able to update the favorite property. And here, as you can see, we are going to call the update task. So this update task, it is coming from this use tasks data store. So I added this function to be able to actually update the tasks. So this is the signature of it. So it's going to have the tasks as first parameter and the operation, and it is a promise that is going to return this object. But also we're going to use this update tasks function to be able to actually update the whole data when we want to edit or delete. But we're going to get into this later on. So this is the update tasks function. So we're having this switch statement. So based on, because we're going to use the toast to be able to actually show the messages based on the operation. And here we're having the try and catch block. We're going to use the promise. And here we are going to actually update the updated tasks area that is coming from this prompt. And then we're going to return the object, which is success as true, and the message that is defined with the success message depending on the operation. So this is basically how we can be able to create this. So as you can see there, it is a bit complicated and I had to update and adjust many things. But once this is set up, it's going to be very easy for us to be able to work with the edit, the copy, and also the deletion. The label, we're gonna add some code for this because there is some logic need to be added to be able to actually update the actual features or labels. So after we can be able to actually set the task as favorite or not. So two things that we are going to add in the dropdown. So we can be able to make a copy. So when I click on make a copy, so this is actually what's going to happen. So it's going to be copied successfully, but also we're going to have this toast notification using shadcn. So we're going to install this. And also I added the deletion function. So as you can see, the actual task has been deleted successfully. But first I want to show you the steps to be able to install the toast from shadcn. So it's a very simple process. So we need first to install this component, and then what we are going to do, we are going to add the toaster in the layout.tsx. So if we go to the layout.tsx, uh, here as you can see, we are going to put it under the children, and it's going to be within the theme provider tag. So once we did this, then we can be able to use the toast. So we need to use or import the use toast hook, and then we can be able to use it like this in any component that you want. So I'm going to show you step by step how to be able to use it. So let me delete all the tabs just to show you everything step by step clearly. So the first thing that I did, so I did a change inside the utils.js. So here into the prompt, so this is the type of the toast. So and also we are going to use the toast and the toaster toast. Basically, these types I couldn't find them, but I had to do a minor change in their file. So if we go to the usetoast.ts, so here I had to export, so it has not been exported. Probably they forgot to add the export keyword here to be able to use the toaster toast. And also I added another export of the type, which is the toast type. So let me check or look for the toast. So there are actually a lot of uh, results. So let me close this, and I'm gonna find this manually. So I forgot where the toast type exists. So anyway, so here it is. So this is the toast type. So make sure to export it because we need it in here to be able to define the structure of the toast and the actual prop. So as you can see, we're going to import the toast and the toaster toast, and to be able to get this actually signature. So here, if we go to the menu items, so this is how we're going to use the use toast hook. So all you have to do is just hover over this and just copy all this signature and just paste it in here to be able to use the toast, which is a function in this switch statement. So that's the first thing. And also I added the kind parameter inside the prompts of the menu item, so you can be able to use this into and pass it down into the handle menu item click. So basically what I was doing, I was just adding the favorite, but now it's going to depend on the kind that is coming from the parent component, which is the task drop down. So this is the actual menu item. So each item that we are looping through, so it's going to have its own kind property. So we are going to pass down inside the menu item so you can be able to use it inside this function. And after this, inside this function, so I added a new case, which is copy. So basically, when the kind is equal to copy, this is gonna be actually triggered. So the first thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna create a new concept called copy task with of type task, of course. So we're gonna use the three dots selected tasks to be able to remain all the previous elements. So these things that you are gonna change. So the task ID, so we are going to define a new three numbers. So we're going to use this simple function to be able to actually return three numbers randomly. So this function, I added it inside the functions folder just to make things organized for our project. So if we go back to the menu item or the utils.js to continue explaining the code here. So the title, it's gonna come from the selected task, that title, and here we're gonna add the copy, and finally, we're going to create to add to assign a new date, which is the current date inside the created at property. So once we created our object, then we're gonna add. So we're gonna create a new copy of the tasks by using the the spread operator, and then we're gonna add this new object, and then we're gonna call the update task, and we're gonna add in it the add copy task, and here we're gonna add the copy. So just to remind you why we did the copy here, because in the function, so let's go back to the use tasks data store. So for the function, as you can see here in the prompt, it's going to accept the operation, but it's going to be optional. So that's why we used undefined. So once this is equal to copy, then we're going to return this message. So again, if we go back to the application and we click make copy, so as you can see, we're going to have this message, and this message is coming from here. So that's why we added in the utils.js, we added the copy operation or operator here. And then we're going to use the toast to be able to actually show the toast. And that's why we actually defined it or added inside the prompt and define the signature that I just explained how to do so. And here for the deletion, so when we click on the delete, so this is going to be triggered, and basically we need to get rid from the element that we want to delete that we selected. So we're going to use the filter method, and then we're going to do the same thing, call the update tasks, and we're going to add the delete operation here. And finally, we are going to return the actual message depending on the result. So since the function returns a promise of an object that has the success property, so if it is true, so we're going to use the default variant, otherwise we're going to use the destructive. And for the title, so we're going to depend again on the success property to be able to actually show the title, whether it's successful or failed, and then we're going to use the delete result that message that is coming from the function that I just showed you. So basically, this is how I updated the code to make sure that we can copy and delete the task that we want. And the next feature that I added is the ability to change the label. So when I hover over the label, so first we are gonna we're gonna have the selected label. So when I click on feature, so as you can see, the feature has been the label has been updated along with the actual toast notification telling us that the operation has been successful. So let's go back to the VS Code to show you what I did. So the first thing that I'm going to start from is the sub-label menu. So here what I did, I added this on-click label item, which is a callback function to be able to actually um, get or take the value that we changed and take it up to the parent component. So when we go to the parent component, which is the tasks drop item, so as you can see here, we're having the on-click item label. So here we are going to link this to this function. So in this function, this is where the magic happens. But first, I want to just show you very quickly the use effect hook. So this actually, what it does, it's going to update the selected label. So whenever we open up the menu, so we can the selection or the label it's going to be selected depending upon the label inside the selected task. So now because it is feature, so we're going to have the feature selected. And if we go to this task and we hover, so let me go to another one. So I don't know why this still here. So if we go to this task and hover over the label, so we're going to have the documentation label because this task is labeled with the documentation tag. So that's the first thing. And here, so this is the function. So for this part, it's just to validate that this new label, because we're going to cast it. So I want to make sure that it's valid. before we can cast this. So, and we are going to check if the selected task and the task are not undefined because this could be null and this could be null as well. And then we are going to update the label with the new label that is coming from the prompt of the function. And here we can be able to safely cast this as a label because we already validated inside this if statement. And then we are going to actually update the task. And here we are going to create a new array, and we're going to use the map function. And if the task ID is equal to the task ID of the selected task, then we're going to use the updated task, which is this one. Otherwise, for the other elements that that don't have this condition, then we're gonna their objects will be the same. Sorry for that, guys. And then we're going to have the try and catch block. And finally, we can be able to safely call the update tasks to be able to pass inside of it the new array so you can be able to actually update the tasks inside the store. And here we're going to just return the messages depending on the result. So this is basically how we can be able to actually create this function. So now all of these functions are working. So the last thing is the edit. But first, before we start working on the edit, so we need to create our so we need to create, um, so we need to add the React hook form to be able to actually check all the fields first, and then we can be able to create our function to add a new task inside the table. So now we are going to start working on adding a task, but the first thing that I added is the ability to track the elements in all the fields that we're having into the dialog. So we're going to make sure that everything is correct before we can be able to add a new task. And for that, we're going to use packages, and mainly the most popular packages that we're going to be using is Zod to be able to actually validate the schema and create schemas. And then we're going to use the React hook form. So it's a pretty popular form to be able to handle a form and also to be able to track the fields and the inputs and also to handle the errors for us. And then we're going to use this package so we can be able to actually link our result schema with the React hook form as I'm going to show you in our code. So just to show you a very quick demonstration. So for example, here we're having title is required. And if, for example, I click on add task, nothing's going to happen. And the focus is going to go back to the actual input because there is still an error. But if I do this and I click on add task, then we can be able to actually show the actual object. And if I do an update in one of these fields, so just to show that everything is tracked correctly, so let me clear out the console log and click on add task. So as you can see, we are going to get in the object all the fields that we selected. So once we hit the stage, it means that everything is great and we can be able to actually use this to add them into a database or an array as we are doing for this particular project. So let's go back to the VS Code, and the first thing that make sure to do, so make sure to copy all of these uh, and this is for Zod, this is for the hook form resolvers, and this is for React hook form. So make sure to add these into your terminal and hit enter to be able to install them. So if we go to the package.json here, so we're gonna find them. So here is Zod, and also we're gonna find React hook form. So, and also we're gonna have the hook form resolvers. So it means that they have been installed successfully. So the first step that we're going to be doing is creating our schema. So we're going to go to the folder task dialog where we're having all the files related to the dialog, and I created a new file called task dialog schema. So here we are going to create our schema as you can see. So this is how the schema is created using Zod for the title. So it's going to be string, and if for example, if it is less than one character, so we're going to have title is required. And if we max out more than 100 characters, so we're going to have the title is too long. So we can, I'm going to just show you this. So let's add more tasks. So it means it shows that it's not working, but the most important thing that is working is when there is empty, so it's going to show us the title is required. So this, you could ignore this. And we're having the status, the priority, and the label. So we're going to use the enum, the built-in enum function to be able to actually create the types as we did for the label and the priority. And finally, we're gonna infer this to be able to, by using the type of keyword, to be able to actually extract all the types from the schema and just save them inside the task form data. So this is the first step. Then we're gonna go to the task dialog.tsx, and the first thing that we should be doing, well, we should be importing the task form data and the task form schema, but also we should be importing all of these objects from the packages that we installed. So I'm going to try my best to explain what is happening in here. So the use form hook, so it is from the React hook form, and we are going to pass the task form data, and then inside this object, it accepts the resolver property, and we're going to use the Zod resolver from this package to be able to actually assign to it the schema that we created. So this is how this package has been engineered. So we need to use this to make sure that our application is working. Then we are going to destruct our method, and right for now, we're going to just use the handle submit function, but we're going to be adding other elements and properties from the method as we move on with the task dialog. And here on the submit function, it's going to accept the data of task of type task form data. And what we're doing just here, we are just logging out the data. And at the bottom, we're going to use the form provider. So the form provider is a provider that is provided by React Hook Forms. You don't have to create your own provider, and also to avoid using prompts when you want, because all of the methods that are coming from the use form hook need to be need to go down to each sub component to be able to avoid props. So we're going to just use the provider just to make sure our code is cleaner. So we need to wrap. So first we need to create this form tag, and we need to wrap everything in between the form tag. So this is where we're going to use the onSubmit function. And then we need to wrap the form tag within the form provider. So all the subcomponents can be able to access to the methods or all the properties that are coming from the methods constant, which is this one. So after we did this, we're going to go to the task title. So let me go to the task title, and this is how we can be able to actually access to the methods from the parent component. So we're going to use the use form context. So to be able to understand this, you should be familiar with the context API, which is a built-in context logic from React. So you should be familiar with this to be able to understand why we did so. So here we can be able to access to the register and the form state, and also we can be able to access to all of these elements, so we're not gonna need them for the task title. And then we're gonna use the register inside the input, and we're gonna use the key that we used inside the schema. So make sure to use the same the same key that we did that we created for our schema to be able to actually track this input. So here, as you can see, we don't have to use the on change listener, and we don't have to use any states because everything is handled by the use form hook. And then we can be able to access to the errors object, and then so because we are adding the task form data, since this it accepts a generic type, so if I do this, so it's going to give me all the properties that we created because we're having the task form data type we added inside the use form context. So this is a cool feature with TypeScript and the React hook form, just to make sure that the logic uh, the logic is handled correctly and don't have any bugs. And then we can be able to access the message that we defined in the schema, which is this one. So this is for the task title. So the next element, I'm going to go to the task label.tsx. So here, because we're going to use for the selection, we're going to use this custom component that is provided by shadcn. So here things are going to be a little bit different. And to be able to do so, the React form library provided for us an object called control. So we are going to actually get this from the use form context, and then we're going to create this controller object, which is also provided by React Hook form package, as you can see. And here we are going to use the render method to be able to actually render this custom component from shadcn. And it is a function that it accepts the field parameter. And we can be able to use the field to be able to actually update the state within this function. So the value is going to be field.value and the on value change event listener. So it's going to accept the value parameter of type task form data, which to be able to access to the label or to the literal types that are coming from the label property. So that's why we did so. And whenever this is changing, it's going to trigger this to be able to actually update the field value. So the management of the states, it's going to be done within the render function. And all of this, it's going to remain the same. So here we need to use the control, which is the control that we got from the use form context. And for example, for the name, if I do this, I can be able to access to the key that we want because of the control object that we got from the use form hook, which is coming from the parent component. So this is basically how we can be able to actually track the elements if we have a custom component. And so let me save the file, and the same thing that we're going to do for the priority, as you can see. So here we're going to get the control object, and here we're going to create the controller tag that is coming from the package. And here, so instead of using the label, we're going to use the priority. The control, it's going to equal to the control. The default value is going to be low. And for the render function, it's going to be the same. So the only thing that is going to be different is the elements that are associated to the priority. And so the same thing for the status, as you can see, so I'm not going to get into this. So it is following the same principle that I did for the task labels. So now when after we defined or we installed the use React form and Zod, then we can be able to actually safely add the task into our array. So now when we fill up the task title, so I'm going to change some of the elements in these fields and click on add task. So as you can see, we're going to have this notification and also the task, the new tag has been updated successfully. And I can do any modification that I want. I can change the label and can set it to favorite, and also I can copy it just to know that everything is working as expected. And also finally I can delete the elements that I created. So the same for this one. So let's go back to the VS Code to show you what I did to be able to create this function. And the first thing that I'm going to start from is the hooks folder. So I created a new function called add task inside our use tasks data store. So it's going to accept as a parameter the task of type task, and it's going to return a promise of an object, success as a boolean, and the message as a string. So it is the same return as we did for the update tasks. And if we go at the bottom of the store, so this is the function. So here we are going, so of course the function is going to be an async function. We're going to use the try and catch block, and here we're going to simulate the synchronous operation. So here we're going to create a new promise, and this is the type that we are expecting to return from this promise. And then we're going to use the resolve method. And finally, we are going to create the set timeout of 1 second delay. And then we're going to actually update our state by using the built-in property or function set from Zustand. So this is going to be a function. So we're going to access to the actual state, and then we're going to be adding, and we're going to make sure if the task is not null. So if it is not null, then we're going to use this turn operator to be able to access to this block to be able to add the new task. Otherwise, we're going to stick with the task that we currently have inside the state object. And then we are going to return the tasks property in this object of this updated tasks. And then we're gonna actually return the resolve method or promise with this object success is true, and the message is gonna be task added successfully. And finally, we're going to return the result. And if something bad happens, we're going to access to the error block. So I'm just logging this error, and we're going to return the object as a success as false, and the message failed to add the task. So also, I created another hook. So it's very simple one to be able to just open up and close the dialog store, since we're going to use this to be able to actually so we're going to use this when we click on the make a copy button to be able to open the dialog. So I need to create a shared state. So we're going to use Zustand for this. And so they're very simple. They're called is open and the set open. So also we're going to use this state inside the task dialog.jsx as I'm going to show you. So this is the updated code. So here we're going to access to the add task function that I just showed you. And here we're going to add the reset function from methods. So I'm going to show you why. And here we're going to use the toast element from the use toast. And here we are going to access to the is open and the set is open. And this we're going to use it for to show the loading spinner that we clicked on the add task, waiting for this to be added inside the array. So the is open and the set open are going to be linked to the dialog. As you can see, they're having these properties open and the on open change. So this one is going to be linked to the is open, and this one is going to be linked to the set is open. So let's go back to our function. So the first thing that we're gonna be doing, so we're gonna update the is loading. So first I want to show you where we are using the is loading. So we're using it inside this button. So when the is loading is true, meaning that we are waiting for the response, we're gonna use this loader icon or spinner, and then we're having the add-in task text. Otherwise, when it is false, we're going to just use this add new task. And as you can see, we're using the is loading inside the disabled property, meaning that when this is true, when we are waiting for a response, the button is going to be disabled as I showed you inside the dialog. So and when it is getting false, then disable it's going to be false, meaning that we can interact with the button again. So now let's go back to our code to continue the code how we are going to create our task. So the first thing that we're going to be doing, we're going to creating a new task object of type task. So the task ID we're going to generate it by using again or reusing this function that we created. And for each element, it's going to be linked to the property that we used for the task type. So the is favorite is going to be by default false, and the created as property, we're going to use the new date to be able to create a date of this current time. And then we're going to use the try and catch block. So we're going to actually access or call the add task, which is an async function. So that's why we use the wait. And here, as you can see, we're using the async function because you can't use the await keyword within a function, and the function is still synchronous. So it needs to be asynchronous. And then we are gonna take this new task and put it in the add task since it is accepting a prompt. And then we're gonna show the toast notification based on the results by using the turn operator. So if it is success, we're going to use the default variant. If it is not, we're going to use the destructive variant. So the title, it's going to be result.success. And here we're going to show the description. So if this is true, we're going to show this with the new task.id as you noticed. Otherwise, we're going to show the fail to add the task message. And the description, it's going to be the result that message that is coming from the add task function. And finally, we're going to use the reset. So because when we click on the add task, the window is closed. So we're using the set open as false, and the fields are not being empty. To be able to force being empty, we're going to use the reset method from the React hook form library. Otherwise, if there is an error, we're going to actually access to this block. And finally, the set is loading. It's going to be false to actually set this is loading back to its default state. So this is how we can be able to create our task. So one last thing that I need to add is modifying the task.